The Galactic Safety Council had never witnessed such blatant disregard for basic self-preservation. High Ambassador Vezral, a towering crystalline being whose faceted surface reflected the chamber's ambient light in prismatic patterns, watched in horror as the human delegation casually strolled through the quarantine field, without protective suits. "Stop. You'll die instantly." Vezral's translation matrix struggled to convey the appropriate level of panic. The crystalline being's surface rippled with anxiety patterns, a sight that would have been beautiful if not for the circumstances. Captain Narration of the Earth ship Reckless Abandon, a name that had already caused several alien species to file formal protests, simply waved and took another sip from her steaming coffee mug. "Our scanners showed the field was just a basic decontamination barrier. Nothing our immune systems can't handle." The other council members, representing 17 of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, collectively shifted away from the humans. The Hivemind Consortium, appearing as a shimmering cloud of synchronized nanoparticles, condensed into a tight, worried ball. But the protocols. Chief Safety Officer NX Terra, an arachnoid being whose 8 eyes were all currently dilated in shock, frantically pulled up holographic safety regulations. Section 7.2.3.4 clearly states all new species must undergo complete molecular scanning and... "Oh, we did scan it," interrupted Lieutenant James Rodriguez, Chen's second-in-command, while attempting to balance a pencil on his nose. "Looked pretty harmless. Besides, we were running late for the meeting, and Sarah here hasn't had her 3rd coffee yet. Trust me, that's the real safety hazard." The council chamber fell into stunned silence, broken only by the gentle slurping sounds of Captain Chen finishing her coffee. Vezral's crystalline structure vibrated at a frequency that in their species indicated extreme distress. You scanned a Class 7 quantum barrier, deemed it pretty harmless, and walked through it, because of a beverage?" The High Ambassador's words emerged in a cascade of harmonics. "Actually," Chen raised a finger, "it's because we were late. The coffee was just a bonus. Speaking of which..." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a thermos. The action caused several security drones to activate their weapon systems before realizing it wasn't, in fact, a deadly weapon. Although given humanity's apparent relationship with caffeine, some might argue otherwise. The Hivemind Consortium pulsed in a pattern that their translator rendered as, "Our preliminary analysis suggests these humans possess either godlike technological advancement that negates all known dangers, or they're completely insane." "Bit of both, really," Rodriguez offered helpfully, having successfully balanced the pencil and now attempting to add an eraser to the arrangement. "We like to call it innovative problem-solving under pressure." Vezral turned all 7 of their sensory clusters toward Captain Chen. "Your species file mentioned you achieved faster-than-light travel just 3 solar cycles ago. How did you manage that so quickly?" Chen and Rodriguez exchanged glances. "Well," Chen began, "funny story actually. We were trying to make a more efficient coffee maker for deep space missions, and one of our engineers accidentally discovered how to fold spacetime while sleep-deprived during a 36-hour testing binge. The council erupted in chaos. The Hivemind Consortium briefly split into its constituent particles out of sheer disbelief. Chief Safety Officer NX Terra began stress-molting. 3 different species simultaneously filed official protests, declaring humans a danger to galactic stability. "You discovered FTL travel, by accident, while making a beverage machine?" Vezral's surface had developed stress fractures. "In our defense," Rodriguez chimed in, finally giving up on his pencil balancing endeavor, "it makes really good coffee. Want to try some?" The mere suggestion caused 2 minor species representatives to flee the chamber. Vezral raised all their appendages in what their species considered a universal gesture of surrender to chaos. "Perhaps," the High Ambassador ventured carefully, "we should discuss your species' approach to safety protocols and risk assessment?" "Oh, sure." Chen brightened, pulling out a tablet. "We brought our safety guidelines. It's pretty straightforward. If it probably won't kill you immediately, it's worth a shot." NX Terra's translator actually short-circuited trying to process this. the arachnoid being had to switch to their backup communication system. That's your entire safety protocol? Well, there's a footnote, Rodriguez added. Unless it looks really cool, then the immediate death thing is negotiable. The HiveMind Consortium began composing what would become the most strongly worded recommendation for species quarantine in Council history. Vezral, however, was experiencing an unsettling realization. Your ship, the crystalline being, began slowly, the one currently docked in our highest security bay. How exactly did you bypass our quantum-locked defense grid? Chen looked slightly embarrassed. Oh, that? We figured since it was basically just a really complicated lock, we'd try the universal solution, turning it off and on again. Worked like a charm. Though we did have to hit it with a wrench at one point. Rodriguez has great aim. The security feeds suddenly showed their ship, and indeed, there was a visible dent in one of the station's most sophisticated defense nodes. Rodriguez gave a proud thumbs up. But those systems are designed to be impossible to manipulate without proper authorization. Interstellar's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. They operate on principles that took our civilizations millennia to develop. Yeah, but have you tried just asking them nicely while threatening them with percussive maintenance? Rodriguez grinned. Works on most things back home. Vezral's crystal structure was now emitting a high-pitched tone that suggested they were one human explanation away from shattering. And you did all this, just to make this meeting on time? Well, we were already running late because we stopped to help this stranded ship near the Carina Nebula, Chen explained, refilling her coffee cup. Lovely folks, looked like sentient gas clouds. Their plasma converter was acting up. The HiveMind Consortium pulsed urgently. The Nebula Nomads? They're one of the most isolationist species in the galaxy. They've never accepted help from anyone. Oh, they didn't accept help at first, Rodriguez clarified. But then we showed them how to make their converter 30% more efficient using duct tape and a modified toaster. They were pretty impressed. Invited us to their plasma cloud equivalent of a barbecue next week. The council chamber descended into another round of chaos as various species tried to process the implications of humans solving in minutes what their best engineers couldn't figure out in centuries, using what appeared to be primitive adhesive materials and cooking appliances. Vezral, making what would later be recorded as either the wisest or most disastrous decision in council history, raised their appendages for silence. I believe, they announced with the resignation of someone who has glimpsed an unavoidable future, we need to create a new classification of species. One that accounts for, whatever this is. Who, can we help name it? Chen asked brightly. We're great at naming things. Just ask the Bodie McBoatface space station back home. The High Ambassador chose to ignore this comment for the sake of their remaining structural integrity. Furthermore, I propose we establish a new emergency protocol for dealing with humans. One that assumes normal logic and causality may not apply. That's fair, Rodriguez nodded sagely. We get that a lot. Though usually people just call it the "oh god, what are they doing now" protocol. As if to punctuate this statement, a small explosion echoed from the direction of their ship, followed by the sound of cheering and someone yelling, "Hey, we fixed your artificial gravity problem. The coffee stops floating now." Vezral, Interstellar, and the entire HiveMind Consortium watched as Chen and Rodriguez high-fived each other. The Council's first contact with humanity was barely an hour old, and they had already violated 17 fundamental laws of physics, 43 safety protocols, and somehow improved 2 perfect systems using what appeared to be random junk and caffeinated determination. Just one question, Vezral ventured, dreading the answer. What do humans do when faced with an actual crisis? Chen's grin turned positively feral. Oh, that's when we get creative. The High Ambassador made a mental note to update the emergency protocols. Again. And perhaps invest in some of this coffee substance. They had a feeling they were going to need it. The Galactic Council's engineering division was experiencing what they diplomatically termed a human situation. Chief Engineer ZXVEC, a being composed primarily of living mathematics and pure logic, was watching their perfectly ordered universe crumble before their probability matrices. "That's not possible," they stated for the 47th time that day, their form flickering between equations of disbelief. "You cannot simply duct tape a quantum stabilizer." Lieutenant Rodriguez held up the offending piece of equipment, which was indeed wrapped in several layers of silver tape and what appeared to be. "Is that a paperclip?" "3 paperclips," Captain Chen corrected proudly, taking a sip from her ever-present coffee mug. "The third one's critical for maintaining quantum coherence. Also, we bedazzled it a bit to make it pretty." The quantum stabilizer, a piece of technology that had taken the Council's finest minds centuries to develop, was now covered in small decorative rhinestones. More impossibly, it was working at 143% efficiency. But, Z-Expect's equations began to develop error messages. The mathematical principles, the quantum uncertainty principles, the laws of thermodynamics. "Oh, those are more like guidelines, really," Rodriguez waved dismissively. "Sometimes you just need to give physics a friendly nudge and a wink." The assembled alien engineers watched in horror as Chen casually tossed the modified stabilizer from hand to hand, a device that could theoretically cause a local collapse of reality if mishandled. Several of them began drafting resignation letters. "Speaking of friendly nudges," Chen added, "we noticed your antimatter containment facility was having some hiccups. Mind if we take a look?" "No." The collective shout from every alien engineer present caused a minor temporal distortion. Unfortunately, it was too late. Rodriguez was already halfway through the supposedly quantum-locked door, whistling what sounded suspiciously like the Imperial March from Star Wars. "How did he even open that?" Z-Expect demanded. "It requires a 17-dimensional key." "Oh, James found out if you hit it at just the right angle while reciting the first verse of Never Gonna Give You Up, it pops right open," Chen explained, finishing her coffee. Something about the quantum resonance of Rick Astley's voice, apparently. The living mathematics that comprised Z-Expect's form briefly displayed the universal symbol for a blue screen of death. Inside the antimatter facility, Rodriguez was staring at the containment field with the expression humans typically reserved for particularly challenging crossword puzzles. "You know what this needs? Rubber bands. Like, a lot of rubber bands. This is a Class X containment facility housing enough antimatter to power half the galaxy." Professor Alara, a serpentine being whose scales changed color with their emotional state, currently a panic-induced mauve, slithered frantically between Rodriguez and the controls. "Yeah, but have you tried making it more bouncy?" Rodriguez pulled a bag of office supplies from his pocket. "Everything works better with some give and take. Look, I'll show you." "Wait." Z-Expect's voice achieved a pitch previously thought mathematically impossible. But Rodriguez had already started applying his modifications. What followed was either the most brilliant or most terrifying display of human engineering in galactic history. Using nothing but rubber bands, paper clips, 2 gummy bears, for the entropy, and what appeared to be a small disco ball, every particle accelerator needs a party mode, Rodriguez somehow increased the containment field's efficiency by 300%. "How? What? Why is it playing Earth music?" Professor Alaria's scales had achieved a new color that their species had never displayed before. "Oh, that's just staying alive, by the Bee Gees," Chen explained, now working on her 7th cup of coffee. "James discovered that antimatter particles are particularly groovy. They contain better when they can dance." Z-Expect, whose entire existence was based on mathematical certainty, was experiencing what humans might call an existential crisis. But where's the quantum equation? The unified field theory? Written it on this napkin, Rodriguez handed over a coffee-stained piece of paper with what looked like a doodle of a cat playing with string theory. "The cat's important. It's both alive and dead until you add the disco ball." The napkin was immediately sealed in a quantum vault for study by future generations, who would spend centuries trying to decipher whether it was brilliant physics or elaborate nonsense. They would eventually conclude it was somehow both. But the day's chaos was far from over. An urgent message flashed across the facility's screens. The experimental stellar forge, the pride of the Council's engineering division, was experiencing critical failures. The containment fields are collapsing. Ilaria's scales shifted to emergency red. The artificial star is becoming unstable. Cool, can we help? Chen and Rodriguez asked simultaneously, with the enthusiasm of children offered free candy. Before anyone could stop them, not that the laws of physics had managed to so far, the human duo was racing toward the stellar forge. ZXVAC and the other engineers followed in various states of panic and morbid curiosity. They arrived to find Rodriguez already halfway inside a maintenance duct, singing Highway to Hell while Chen appeared to be brewing coffee. What are you doing? ZXVAC demanded, their mathematical form glitching with stress. Well, Chen's voice came from behind her improvised coffee station. We figured out your stellar forge is basically just a really big pressure cooker. And nobody knows pressure cookers better than sleep-deprived grad students. It's a miniature star. Ilara protested. It's not remotely similar to a human cooking device. Sure it is, Rodriguez's voice echoed from the duct. Just needs a proper release valve. And maybe some jazz. What followed was 15 minutes of what the official report would later describe as aggressive percussive maintenance, combined with unauthorized musical accompaniment. Rodriguez emerged covered in grease and sporting a triumphant grin, while Chen finished what appeared to be the world's most dangerous cup of coffee, brewed using excess heat from the stellar forge. There you go. Rodriguez announced proudly. We installed a simple pressure release system based on the principle of when in doubt, let it shake it all about. We also made it more energy efficient, Chen added, sipping her stellar forged coffee. Turns out stars really like Elvis. Who knew? The forge was indeed working perfectly now. Better than perfectly. It was producing stellar matter with unprecedented purity, while quietly playing jailhouse rock in the background. ZXVAC stared at their monitoring equipment, which was showing results that should have been impossible. You stabilized a stellar forge, with earth music and improvised plumbing? And interpretive dance, Rodriguez added. The dance was crucial. You have to make the particles feel appreciated. Professor Ilara, whose scales had now cycled through their entire known color spectrum and invented several new ones, finally found their voice. Why does everything you do defy the fundamental laws of the universe? Chen shrugged, already starting another pot of stellar forged coffee. Sometimes the laws of physics just need a little encouragement to be more flexible. Usually works better if you don't tell them it's impossible first. As if to emphasize her point, the stellar forge hummed happily, its containment field now decorated with what appeared to be Christmas lights, for morale. ZXVAC, their form now permanently displaying error messages, made a decision. We need to update the engineering division's protocols. Again. And perhaps. They glanced at Chen's coffee setup, study this caffeine substance. Force science. Oh, you haven't seen anything yet, Rodriguez grinned, pulling out what looked suspiciously like a kaleidoscope and a rubber chicken. Wait until we show you what we can do with your quantum computer. The collective groan from the alien engineers was drowned out by the sound of Don't Stop Believin' now emanating from the perfectly functioning stellar forge. Somewhere in the universe, the laws of physics filed for early retirement. The Grand Hall of Interstellar Cooperation, usually a bastion of dignified diplomatic discourse, had been transformed into what the humans cheerfully called a proper party. High Diplomat Qarthax, a being of pure light and protocol, was watching their carefully orchestrated diplomatic summit descend into what could only be described as organized chaos. Captain Chen, they flickered anxiously, is it truly necessary to have these party poppers at a formal diplomatic function? Absolutely essential, Chen confirmed, adjusting what appeared to be a party hat atop her uniform. You can't have proper negotiations without confetti. It's basic human diplomacy. Beside her, Rodriguez was teaching a group of crystalline beings how to do the Macarena. More disturbingly, they were getting quite good at it. But the ancient protocols, Qarthax began, only to be interrupted by the sound of what humans called a conga line snaking through the hall, led by Ambassador 6 of the HiveMind Consortium, who had apparently discovered the joy of rhythmic movement. The protocols could use some updating anyway, Chen grinned, passing out more party hats. Besides, have you ever tried to stay mad at someone while wearing one of these? Diplomatic genius. The Galactic Security Council, represented by severe-looking beings in formal attire, watched in horror as their carefully planned seating arrangement was abandoned in favor of what Rodriguez called mingling. Species that had been at war for millennia were now awkwardly attempting to master the electric slide together. But the formal procedures, Senior Diplomat Vri, a gaseous being wearing their most diplomatic cloud formation, started to protest. Are getting a much-needed upgrade, Rodriguez interrupted, now teaching a group of energy beings how to play duck, duck, goose. Look, the Andromedans and the Void Walkers are sharing snacks. When's the last time that happened? Indeed, two species that hadn't spoken in 3 centuries were now bonding over what Chen had introduced as cosmic nachos. The recipe, apparently involving 17 different dimensions of cheese, had already been classified as a controlled substance in 3 star systems. Huarthax's luminescence flickered with distress as they observed a delegation of quantum physicists attempting to limbo under a bar that may or may not have existed in this dimension. This is not how we conduct diplomatic relations. Maybe that's been the problem, Chen suggested, somehow managing to balance a plate of interdimensional hors d'oeuvres while setting up what looked suspiciously like a karaoke machine. Everyone's been too focused on being diplomatic to actually get along. The karaoke machine, as it turned out, would prove to be either the greatest breakthrough or the biggest disaster in galactic diplomatic history. It began innocently enough, with Rodriguez convincing the Arcturian ambassador to perform Sweet Caroline. By the third chorus, even the notoriously stoic Silicon Consciousness was joining in on the Ba Ba Bah. Is that the High Council of Eternal Wisdom doing the YMCA? Vri's gaseous form, condensed in shock. With surprisingly good choreography, Chen nodded approvingly. Turns out having multiple appendages is great for dance moves. The situation reached new levels of diplomatic uncertainty when the quantum harmonics, a species that communicated entirely through probability waves, discovered the concept of breakdancing. Their impromptu performance briefly violated several laws of physics, but earned perfect scores from the hastily assembled judging panel. Captain Chen, Huarthax flickered urgently, the Galactic Trade Agreement negotiations are going great. Chen interrupted, pointing to a corner where representatives from 17 different species were engaged in an intense game of Twister. That's not negotiation, that's team building, Rodriguez supplied helpfully, now teaching a group of temporal beings how to do the time warp. Nothing brings people together like trying not to faceplant while your left appendage is on blue. The evening reached its crescendo when Chen introduced what she called the ultimate diplomatic tool, a chocolate fountain. Species that had evolved beyond the need for physical sustenance found themselves drawn to its hypnotic flow. The HiveMind Consortium, attempting to comprehend the concept of fondue, accidentally achieved a new level of collective consciousness. But what about the traditional exchange of formal declarations? Vri worried, their gaseous form swirling anxiously. Already handled, Rodriguez grinned, pointing to what appeared to be a massive game of Pictionary taking place in one corner. Turns out, drawing terrible pictures of complex trade agreements is way more effective than reading them. Look, they're actually having fun with tariff negotiations. He wasn't wrong. The Mercurian Trade Federation and the Plutonian Commerce Guild, notorious for their centuries-long economic rivalry, were now laughing together as they tried to draw reciprocal tax agreements using only stick figures. And the sacred ritual of diplomatic gift exchange? Huarthax's light dimmed with concern. We've upgraded to Secret Santa, Chen explained, distributing numbered tags to various delegates. Much more fun, plus it adds an element of mystery. The Andromedans are really getting into it, they wrapped their gift in 11 dimensions. As if to prove her point, a delighted squeal echoed across the hall as a silicon-based life form unwrapped what appeared to be a lava lamp. It's like a tiny containment field for aesthetic chaos, they exclaimed joyfully. The traditional diplomatic dinner, usually a somber affair governed by 17 volumes of protocol, had been replaced by what Chen called a potluck. Species were sharing dishes from their home worlds, leading to some interesting culinary discoveries and only 3 minor temporal anomalies. Did you know, Rodriguez announced to anyone within earshot, that Betelgeusean quantum curry pairs perfectly with Earth guacamole? The probability fluctuations really bring out the avocado. The evening reached new heights of diplomatic unconventionality when Chen introduced the concept of dance-off diplomacy. Territorial disputes that had plagued the galaxy for eons were now being settled through elaborate dance battles, judged by a panel that included 3 energy beings, a Time Lord, not that kind, and a very enthusiastic potted plant that no one could remember inviting. "This is unprecedented," Vri observed, their gaseous form now sporting what appeared to be a tiny party hat. "The Proxima Centauri Collective and the Sirius Alliance are actually talking to each other." Nothing like a shared embarrassment to break the ice, Chen nodded sagely, watching as both delegations attempted to master the chicken dance. As the party reached its peak, Huarthax made a startling realization. More diplomatic agreements had been reached in the past 4 hours than in the previous 4 centuries. Species that had been locked in eternal stalemates were now exchanging contact information and making plans for future hangouts. Perhaps, they admitted, their luminescence taking on a thoughtful hue, there is something to be said for this human approach to diplomacy. "Just wait until we introduce them to karaoke battle treaties," Rodriguez grinned, already setting up the machine. "Nothing says lasting peace like a duet of Don't Stop Believin'. As the evening wound down, with various species attempting to exchange social media contacts that didn't yet exist across their vastly different technological platforms, Chen gathered everyone for one final diplomatic innovation. "Group photo," she announced, somehow producing a camera capable of capturing beings that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Everyone say galactic peace." The resulting image, showing everything from energy beings to quantum consciousness to a very confused maintenance bot that had gotten caught up in the conga line, would become the most popular piece of diplomatic documentation in Council history. "You know," Huarthax mused, now sporting both a party hat and a Galaxy's Best Diplomat sash, "we should update the official diplomatic protocols to include some of these innovations." "Agreed," Vri's gaseous form bobbed in agreement. "Though perhaps we should wait until after the Andromeda Galaxy's representatives finish their breakdancing tournament. It would be diplomatically insensitive to interrupt." As the party finally wound down, with various species attempting to exchange contact information across incompatible technological platforms and dimensional barriers, Chen and Rodriguez exchanged satisfied grins. "Mission accomplished?" Rodriguez asked, carefully storing away the karaoke machine for future diplomatic emergencies. "Oh, definitely," Chen nodded, watching as the High Council of Eternal Wisdom exchanged friendship bracelets with the quantum harmonics. "Though we should probably wait a bit before introducing them to the concept of office parties. The galaxy would never be quite the same after that night, but perhaps that was exactly what it needed. After all, as Chen liked to say, you haven't truly achieved peace until you've done the hokey pokey with your former enemies." And somewhere in the cosmos, the ancient protocols of diplomacy filed for early retirement, right alongside the laws of physics. The Galactic Emergency Response Center was experiencing what Captain Chen would later describe as a bit of a situation. Multiple holographic displays showed a massive interdimensional anomaly that was, in technical terms, eating reality. "Well, that's not ideal," Chen observed, somehow maintaining her calm while sipping from her 13th cup of coffee. The liquid was now glowing slightly, having been brewed with water from a quantum uncertainty field. Chief Emergency Coordinator Exthal, a being composed of pure anxiety and emergency protocols, was vibrating at a frequency typically associated with imminent nervous breakdowns. "Not ideal? Not ideal? Reality is literally unraveling, and you're doing, what exactly?" Rodriguez, sprawled in a chair with his feet up on a console displaying apocalyptic warnings, was making paper airplanes out of what appeared to be classified emergency procedures. "Brainstorming. Did you know if you fold these quantum calculation sheets just right, they fly through multiple dimensions? Stop making toys out of our last hope for survival." Actually, Chen interjected, watching one of Rodriguez's planes disappear into a temporal vortex and emerge 3 seconds ago. I think he might be onto something. The emergency center staff, representing the finest minds from 17 galaxies, watched in horror as Chen began gathering more supplies. These included but were not limited to 3 rubber bands, a stapler, what appeared to be a disco ball, and concerning amount of hot sauce. Captain Chen, First Response Director Ilaria's tentacles were tied in stress knots. This anomaly is consuming entire star systems. It's already devoured the great archives of Andromeda. To be fair, Rodriguez pointed out, their filing system was terrible. Maybe this is just the universe's way of suggesting a reorganization? Before Ilara could express their outrage at this cavalier attitude toward cosmic catastrophe, the main screen lit up with new warnings. The anomaly had just consumed the Quantum Defense Network, the galaxy's most sophisticated protection system. Oh good, Chen said brightly, causing several alien officials to question their universal translator's sanity. Now we don't have to worry about getting permission to break it. Break, what? X-the-less form was now giving off visible stress radiation. The universe, obviously. Chen was now drawing what looked like a hybrid between a children's crayon drawing and an advanced quantum mechanics equation. See, your problem is you're thinking too logically about this. Too, logically, about preventing the end of existence? Ilaria's tentacles were now stress-eating emergency rations. Exactly. Rodriguez snapped his fingers, sending another paper airplane through what might have been next Tuesday. This anomaly operates on chaos theory, right? So we need to out-chaos it. The assembled alien officials watched in mounting horror as Chen and Rodriguez began implementing what they called Operation Chaos Control, a name that seemed to be deliberately contradictory. First, Chen announced, setting up what appeared to be a makeshift DJ booth, we need to establish dominance over the chaos. And nothing says, we're crazier than you, like a quantum-enhanced dubstep remix of classical music. Is that Beethoven's Fifth Symphony mixed with cat meows? X-the-less form flickered in confusion. And goat screams, Rodriguez added proudly. The frequency matches the anomaly's quantum signature. Plus, it's hilarious. Before anyone could stop them, not that anyone had succeeded in stopping humans so far, Chen and Rodriguez had connected their improvised chaos generator to the remnants of the Quantum Defense Network. The result was either brilliant or insane, possibly both. See, Chen explained, while adjusting what looked suspiciously like Christmas lights strung around critical emergency equipment, the anomaly feeds on predictable patterns. So we're going to feed it something so unpredictable it'll get indigestion. The main screen showed their plan taking effect. The anomaly, upon encountering their quantum dubstep Cats and Goats remix, actually paused its reality-consuming rampage. If cosmic anomalies could look confused, this one definitely did. Now for Phase 2. Rodriguez announced cheerfully, pulling out what appeared to be a modified karaoke machine. We're going to teach it to dance. You're going to what? The collective shout from the emergency response team caused several reality monitors to crack. Think about it, Chen said, now programming dance patterns into the quantum defense grid. It's consuming reality because it's lonely. Nobody ever asked it to boogie. What followed was either the most brilliant or most ridiculous response to a cosmic crisis in galactic history. Chen and Rodriguez, using their jerry-rigged equipment, began broadcasting a signal that combined quantum mathematics, Earth's greatest dance hits, and what appeared to be cooking recipes. Are you teaching a reality-consuming anomaly how to do the Macarena? Ilaria's tentacles had gone limp with disbelief. Among other things, Rodriguez confirmed, watching as the anomaly's consumption patterns began to sync with the rhythm. Look, it's got great moves for something that exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The assembled aliens watched in stunned silence as the anomaly, destroyer of worlds and consumer of reality, began to dance. Its reality-consuming tendrils moved in what was unmistakably a pattern, and was it humming? Now for the finale. Chen declared, pulling out what looked like a child's toy but was somehow connected to the most advanced quantum computers in existence. We're going to give it a hobby. A hobby, Exthel repeated flatly, their form now displaying error messages in 17 languages. Everyone needs a creative outlet, Rodriguez explained, as if teaching arts and crafts to a cosmic horror was perfectly normal. We're thinking scrapbooking. It can use all those realities it consumed to make something nice. Incredibly, impossibly, it was working. The anomaly, now fully engaged in what could only be described as interpretive dance across multiple dimensions, had stopped its consumption of reality. Instead, it appeared to be reorganizing it. See? Chen gestured proudly at the main screen, where the anomaly was now arranging consumed star systems into what looked suspiciously like a collage. It just needed a little encouragement to express itself constructively. You're telling me, Alara said slowly, all tentacles pointed at the display in disbelief, that your solution to an universe-ending anomaly was to give it a dance lesson and introduce it to crafting? Well, when you say it like that, it sounds ridiculous, Rodriguez grinned, watching as the anomaly began what appeared to be a quantum scrapbook of its favorite consumed realities. We prefer to call it creative crisis management. The emergency response team watched as the anomaly, now fully committed to its new hobbies, began to actually restore some of the realities it had consumed, arranging them in what it apparently considered a more aesthetically pleasing pattern. Is it color-coding galaxies? Exthel form had given up on maintaining any semblance of professional composure. And organizing them by vibe, Chen confirmed proudly. I think we've discovered the universe's first interdimensional interior decorator. The crisis, it seemed, had been averted through what the official report would later describe as aggressive application of human recreational activities to a cosmic entity. The anomaly, now fully absorbed in its new hobbies, had transformed from a threat to existence into something of an artistic sensation. We should probably update the emergency response protocols, Alara suggested weakly, watching as the anomaly arranged a cluster of nebulae into what appeared to be a cosmic mood board. Already on it, Rodriguez said, holding up another paper airplane made from the old protocols. Though we might want to wait until after the anomaly finishes its dance recital. It's been practicing really hard. As if on cue, the entity began what could only be described as a multidimensional performance of Stayin' Alive, using entire galaxies as disco balls. Chen leaned back, sipping her still glowing coffee with satisfaction. You know what this means, right? That we've officially made the universe weird enough that even reality-consuming anomalies want to join the party? Rodriguez suggested. Exactly. Plus, she added with a grin, think of the possibilities for next year's Galactic Cultural Festival. Our new friend here does amazing light shows. Somewhere in the cosmos, the laws of probability joined physics and diplomacy in early retirement, leaving behind a note that simply read, humans, man. What can you do? The Galactic Strategic Command Center had never witnessed such deliberate disregard for standard crisis response procedures. Of course, they'd never faced a swarm of quantum crystalline space locusts that were systematically converting entire solar systems into what appeared to be cosmic modern art installations. Hold my coffee, Captain Chen said, handing her glowing mug to a very concerned Lieutenant Rodriguez. The liquid inside had achieved sentience 3 days ago and was currently working on its doctoral thesis. Captain, Supreme Commander Zoxel's holographic form flickered with barely contained panic. These entities have already transformed 7 systems into abstract sculptures. The Andromedans are particularly upset about their capital world being turned into what they're calling a poor attempt at postmodern expressionism. Critics, everyone's a critic, Rodriguez muttered, trying to prevent Chen's coffee from solving the universal unified field theory. Though I have to admit, that nebula they redesigned does look a bit like a banana. Chen was already at the main console, pulling up what appeared to be. Is that an Earth entertainment streaming service? Zoxel's form glitched in disbelief. Netflix has the answer to everything, Chen declared confidently, scrolling through categories. Aha! Here we go, Interior Design Nightmares, Season 47. The assembled galactic leadership watched in mounting horror as Chen began taking notes from what appeared to be a reality show about renovating Earth dwellings. Captain, First Strategic Officer Yuri, a being of pure energy and protocol, pulsed anxiously. How exactly is watching humans argue about paint colors going to help us with space locust art critics? Simple, Chen grinned, an expression that had caused at least 3 alien species to develop new anxiety responses. We're going to outdesign them. Rodriguez, who had finally convinced Chen's coffee to focus on its thesis rather than trying to solve the meaning of life, nodded enthusiastically. Classic human strategy: if you can't beat them, confuse them so badly they forget what game they're playing. What followed was either the most brilliant or most ridiculous strategic planning session in galactic history. Chen, armed with knowledge from 15 seasons of various home improvement shows, began outlining what she called Operation Extreme Makeover, Galaxy Edition. First, she announced, drawing what looked like a child's crayon art on the quantum tactical display, we need to understand our enemy's aesthetic. Their aesthetic is destruction and chaos. Zoxel protested. No, Rodriguez corrected, now helping Chen's coffee with its bibliography. Their aesthetic is clearly neo-modernist, with a hint of quantum expressionism. Very 31st century. They're just working with a limited palette. Limited palette? Yuri's energy form dimmed in confusion. Exactly. Chen snapped her fingers, causing several reality monitors to recalibrate. They're only using disassembled solar systems. So amateur. We need to show them what real cosmic art looks like. The plan, as it emerged, was either genius or madness, possibly both. Chen proposed using the galaxy's defense grid not as a weapon, but as the universe's largest art installation. See, we'll start with a little feng shui, she explained, rearranging holographic star systems like furniture. Maybe move this black hole over here, it really opens up the space. Captain, Zoxel's form was now displaying error messages in 17 dimensions. You cannot simply redecorate the galaxy. Watch me, Chen replied, already programming what appeared to be a cosmic light show into the defense grid. Rodriguez, how's the soundtrack coming? Rodriguez, who had somehow rigged a quantum computer to function as a DJ booth, gave a thumbs up. Got everything from classical to K-pop, all synchronized to pulsar frequencies. These space locusts won't know what hit their aesthetic sensibilities. The plan, codenamed Project Runway, Celestial Edition, was put into motion before any of the galactic leadership could file the appropriate protest forms. Chen and Rodriguez, armed with nothing but Earth pop culture references and an unhealthy amount of caffeine, began their counteroffensive. First came the light show. Using the defense grid's energy matrices, they created what Chen called a proper cosmic disco. Nebulae were illuminated in pulsing patterns, black holes were given glitter effects, and somehow, they managed to make an entire spiral arm of the galaxy do the wave. Are those pulsars dancing in synchronization? Yuri's energy form fluctuated in disbelief. Synchronized swimming was very big on Earth in the 20th century, Rodriguez explained, as if that clarified anything. We're bringing it back, but with stars. The space locusts, confronted with this unprecedented display of cosmic choreography, actually paused their artistic destruction to watch. Several of them appeared to be taking notes. Now for Phase 2. Chen declared, initiating what she called Extreme Makeover, Quantum Edition. Using the defense grid's matter manipulation capabilities, they began creating what could only be described as installation art on a cosmic scale. Are you turning that asteroid field into a water feature? Zoxel's hologram briefly displayed the blue screen of death. Every good design needs a focal point, Chen nodded sagely, while simultaneously programming a group of comets to perform what appeared to be a synchronized routine to Swan Lake. The space locusts were now definitely watching. Their attempts at cosmic reformation had been primarily focused on geometric patterns and abstract shapes. This was something else entirely. Look. Rodriguez pointed excitedly at the main screen. They're trying to copy our nebula lighting technique. Amateurs, they forgot the disco ball effect. Chen's coffee, which had now completed its doctoral thesis and was working on a theory of quantum aesthetics, suggested adding what it called a little zooz to the presentation. This apparently translated to teaching a cluster of neutron stars to perform a Broadway musical number. The harmonics of nuclear fusion really bring out the emotional depth of "Don't Rain on My Parade," Chen explained to the increasingly bewildered galactic leadership. The space locusts, faced with this unprecedented display of artistic audacity, began showing signs of what xenopsychologists would later term aesthetic crisis. Their own attempts at cosmic reformation seemed suddenly inadequate compared to the sheer chaotic creativity of human interior design principles applied to astronomical scales. Are they asking for decorating tips? Yuri's energy form pulsed in disbelief. Indeed, several of the space locusts had broken formation and were now attempting to communicate through what appeared to be interpretive dance using gravitational waves. "Oh, they're struggling with the feng shui of that binary system," Rodriguez noted, somehow understanding their gravitational choreography. Classic rookie mistake, never put two massive stars in the relationship corner. What followed was perhaps the galaxy's first interspecies interior design consultation. Chen and Rodriguez, drawing from Earth's vast repository of home improvement shows and with occasional input from Chen's now postdoctoral coffee, began teaching the space locusts the finer points of cosmic decoration. No, Chen was explaining to a particularly enthusiastic locust, you can't just turn everything into geometric shapes. You need flow, darling. Drama. Maybe try a nice water feature, we can repurpose that ice giant over there. The galactic leadership watched in stunned silence as their greatest threat was transformed into what appeared to be an enthusiastic group of cosmic design students. The space locusts, rather than converting systems into abstract art, were now carefully following Chen and Rodriguez's guidance to create what they called livable spaces with quantum flair. And remember, Rodriguez called out to a group of locusts attempting to redesign a spiral arm, accent pieces are everything. Maybe try a nice supernova, really makes the neighboring systems pop. Should we update the crisis response protocols? Yuri asked weakly, watching as a team of space locusts carefully arranged a cluster of pulsars into what was apparently a more aesthetically pleasing configuration. Already on it, Chen replied, now conducting what appeared to be a master class in nebula lighting techniques. Though we might want to wait until after next week's gallery opening. These guys are really excited to show off their new portfolio. Zoxalus hologram watched as the former threat to galactic civilization enthusiastically applied Earth interior design principles to the cosmos. We've turned space locust art critics into HGTV fans, Rodriguez supplied helpfully. Just wait until they discover renovation shows. Nothing brings species together like arguing about cosmic countertops. As if to prove his point, a heated debate had broken out between two groups of locusts about the proper placement of a quasar in what they were now calling the galaxy's accent wall. Chen's coffee, having now achieved a level of consciousness that transcended normal physics, offered its own suggestion, perhaps a water feature made of liquefied time? Very avant-garde. Somewhere in the universe, the concepts of art and science filed for joint custody of whatever was happening, while interior design principles requested a restraining order against their new cosmic applications. The annual Galactic Council review session, traditionally a somber assessment of interstellar affairs, had been permanently altered ever since humanity joined the cosmic community. The main chamber, once a model of austere dignity, now featured what Captain Chen insisted was essential mood lighting and a coffee bar that served beverages in 17-dimensional states simultaneously. Item number 1 on today's agenda, High Counselor Trix announced, their crystalline form reflecting the disco ball that nobody had managed to remove since last month's Emergency Dance Response Protocol test. We need to discuss the recent modifications to standard operating procedures. You mean the improvements? Rodriguez called out cheerfully from his position at the newly installed Emergency Innovation Station, a corner of the chamber that somehow contained every random object humans had ever used to save the galaxy, from paper clips to that one rubber duck that had prevented a temporal collapse. Improvements is a matter of perspective, Trix replied diplomatically, while their assistant tried to prevent Chen's latest cup of coffee from achieving consciousness and applying for council membership. For instance, the new requirement to have vibing checks before all major decisions has reduced interstellar conflicts by 73%. Chen interjected, pulling up a holographic chart that somehow incorporated both serious statistical analysis and emoji ratings. Turns out it's hard to start a war when you're doing the cha-cha slide. The council chamber, now permanently equipped with what humans called party mode readiness, had indeed seen a dramatic decrease in hostile incidents. Though this might have been because most species were too busy trying to figure out how humans had managed to make the universal translation matrix wrap in iambic pentameter. Moving on to item 2, Trix continued, their crystal structure vibrating slightly to the beat of the background music that now seemed to follow humans everywhere. The recent modifications to our emergency response protocols. A holoscreen displayed the new emergency procedures, which included such innovations as the Hold My Coffee protocol, for situations requiring solutions that defy known physics. The Why Not initiative, encouraging creative problem-solving through strategic application of chaos. The Dance It Out clause, mandatory dance breaks during crisis situations to promote out-of-the-box thinking. The Human-Style Response option, official permission to solve problems in ways that make no sense until they work. I particularly like the new crisis classification system, Rodriguez noted proudly. Rating emergencies on a scale from mild inconvenience to hold my beer really streamlines the response process. Chief Emergency Coordinator Exthal, whose job had evolved from maintaining strict protocols to basically just watching humans work and documenting the impossibilities they achieved, pulled up their latest report. In the past standard year, they began, their form flickering with what might have been either stress or amusement. We've had to add 47 new categories to our solutions that shouldn't work but did database. Including, but not limited to, solving a quantum singularity crisis with interpretive dance and hot sauce. Preventing an AI rebellion by introducing them to cat videos. Negotiating peace with space pirates through a galactic baking competition. Resolving a temporal paradox with what humans called a weekend craft project. Averting environmental disasters using what appeared to be office supplies and good vibes. Don't forget the diplomatic breakthrough we achieved with the void entities. Chen added enthusiastically. Who knew ancient cosmic horrors would be so into karaoke? The council chamber's main screen displayed footage of what had become known as the Tuesday Night Interdimensional Karaoke League, where representatives from various species, including several traditionally incorporeal ones, gathered to perform what humans called the classics. The sight of a void entity passionately performing Sweet Caroline while a chorus of quantum beings provided backup had become surprisingly normal. Which brings us to item 3, Trix continued, their crystal structure now naturally resonating with what appeared to be Earth's top 40 hits. The proposed standardization of human methods. The chamber erupted in a mixture of excitement and terror. Several species had already begun implementing what they called controlled chaos protocols, while others were still trying to understand how humans had managed to turn the galaxy's most sophisticated defense system into what they called a really epic light show. We've prepared a presentation, Chen announced, standing up with what the council had learned to recognize as her "I'm about to change everything" grin. Rodriguez, meanwhile, was setting up what appeared to be a combination of advanced quantum computing equipment and party supplies. Oh no, Exthal muttered, their form already displaying the warning signs of an impending excitement-induced meltdown. Oh yes, Chen declared, as the lights dimmed and what could only be described as a cosmic variety show began. Welcome to How to Human, a guide to embracing chaos and making it work anyway. What followed was either the most brilliant or most ridiculous training session in council history. Chen and Rodriguez, with occasional input from Chen's coffee, which had now earned several advanced degrees and was teaching quantum physics on the side, demonstrated the fine art of human problem-solving. Rule number 1, Chen explained, while Rodriguez juggled what appeared to be small portable black holes. If it looks impossible, you're probably just looking at it wrong. Try turning it upside down, adding glitter, or asking it nicely to cooperate. Rule 2, Rodriguez added, now successfully teaching a group of energy beings how to do the Macarena. Anything can be a tool if you're creative enough. We once saved a solar system with nothing but a paperclip and positive attitude. The presentation included such groundbreaking sections as improvisation, when plans meet reality and reality loses. The art of winging it, a scientific approach to making things up as you go. Why not, a revolutionary decision-making framework. Coffee, the sixth fundamental force of the universe. Dance breaks, the universal problem solver. And remember, Chen emphasized, while demonstrating how to turn a standard emergency protocol into both a paper airplane and a potential solution to faster-than-light travel, the universe is weird anyway. We're just helping it embrace its true self. The council watched as their carefully ordered understanding of reality was systematically replaced by what humans called vibes-based problem-solving. The strange thing was, it seemed to be working. Statistical analysis shows a 300% increase in successful crisis resolution, Exfil reported, their form now automatically swaying to the background music. Though we've had to redefine success to include solutions that work for reasons we don't understand and probably don't want to. The new normal, Drix observed, their crystal structure now permanently tinted with what humans called party colors, appears to be a state of organized chaos where the impossible happens on schedule and logic takes a permanent vacation. That's the spirit. Rodriguez cheered, while teaching a group of temporal beings how to breakdance through multiple dimensions. Next up, we're thinking of starting a galactic talent show. Nothing brings peace like watching a hive-mind collective perform synchronized swimming. As the session concluded, with various species attempting to master what humans called the art of chilling, Chen's Coffee, now serving as an unofficial council advisor, offered its own observation. Perhaps the true achievement of humanity was not conquering chaos, but teaching the galaxy to dance with it. The new council chambers, permanently equipped for both serious diplomatic functions and impromptu dance parties, stood as a testament to humanity's impact on galactic civilization. The traditional motto "order through protocol" had been unofficially amended to include, or whatever works. You know what this means? Chen asked, watching as a group of traditionally warring species argued about playlist selections for the next Interstellar karaoke night. That we've successfully infected the entire galaxy with human chaos? Rodriguez suggested, helping a quantum being perfect their moonwalk. Exactly. And next week, she added with a grin that caused several reality monitors to preemptively display error messages, we're teaching them about holiday office parties. The galaxy, having finally accepted that resistance to human chaos was futile, settled into its new normal, a state of perpetual readiness for both cosmic crises and impromptu celebrations, where the line between saving the universe and having fun had become delightfully blurred. And somewhere in the cosmos, order and chaos met for coffee, supplied by Chen's sentient brew, naturally, and agreed that things were much more interesting this way anyway.